When it comes to its playable roster, Super Smash Bros. Has what I like to refer to as main character syndrome. It's only natural considering how many series are represented that a good number of those characters would be protagonists. But I also see this philosophy bleed into speculation as well. It's always about getting in as many franchises as possible, as many companies on that copyright list. Once the next big name is in, it's time to wrap up discussion on that front. We gotta move on to the next one quick. However, when you neglect double dipping into what's already here, you're naturally going to look past some really interesting potential for designs. And it is something that Smash Bros. Has dabbled in on occasion. Oftentimes, this comes in the form of secondary protagonists, your player 2s, even the occasional villain. But once in a blue moon, we are treated to something much more interesting. Enter Piranha Plant. I love this inclusion so much. For the first time, maybe ever, the developers put all preconceived notions as to what a character can be aside. Sure, we've had joke characters before, but those have always been established characters, ones with substantial roles to play in their games, or parts of their anatomy that moves can be extrapolated from. This is just a plant. It's just a random weak enemy, and it doesn't even have the clout of being the weakest enemy in its own series. They just included it because they could, and it was amazing. The second plant was included in Smash. He endeared himself to millions of people pretty much overnight, all for a character that wasn't on the radar, for a character some could argue isn't even a character. It's something I wish that we could see more of. Imagine how fun a Koopa would be, or a Lionel for Hylia's sake. It made me want to take a crack at one of these characters myself, someone who is by no means a frontrunner in speculation, but has so much potential for an interesting moveset. You read the title, you know where I'm going with this. What if the skeleton was a character in Smash Bros? First things first, why the skeleton? Why not a villager or a creeper, or anyone else for that matter? Well, I firmly believe that when it comes to further representing Minecraft, the skeleton is the best choice. Minecraft doesn't really have a story, so there aren't really any other characters to include. Villagers are passive by nature, and despite being incredibly iconic, creepers are a one-trick pony. They blow up, that's it. It's a role I think would be much better fit for an assist trophy. Skeletons, meanwhile, have so much to pull from. For instance, they're active combatants. There are different species of skeletons, and, in terms of bringing a unique playstyle to the game, Smash has yet to include a character whose main focus of attack is archery. There are other characters that would fit the lattermost role, most notably Rivali or Decidueye, may he rest in peace, but I mean, come on, being able to play as a skeleton would be hilarious. So, first and foremost, the skeleton should be able to showcase what it means to be an archer in a Smash game. Alongside that, it should be representative of its many subspecies, and because it's from Minecraft, it should showcase the sandbox nature of the game, which means that it would make use of a lot of different items like Steve does, a lot of which the skeleton species can't actually use in-game. But I felt like taking that liberty as I wanted this moveset to showcase not just the skeleton species, but the creativity that is archery in Minecraft. For his attributes, the skeleton would be on the lighter side of the roster, given that there is literally no meat on those bones. He would also be a zoner naturally, so him being light would help quell the rage of those incapable of handling the existence of this archetype. He also wouldn't be the fastest on the ground, with movement similar to Steve. A character who is both slow and light sounds like a recipe for low tier, but don't worry, he'll have a lot of tricks to help augment his movement. In terms of animations, skeletons also have the simplistic animations that Steve has, so he would be very similar to him in that regard. Despite that, aiming with a bow has a surprisingly fluid feel to it in Minecraft, with a full 360-degree range of motion available, meaning that his animations would have plenty of clarity despite the simple actions. And if that's not enough, they could dip into the more detailed style of animation from dungeons if they had to. Skeleton's idle stance and walk would be taken directly from Minecraft, arms down, bow in hand, ready to shoot at a moment's notice. And, like Steve, his crouch is based off of the sneaking animation. But the skeleton doesn't have a crawl, or any additional movement options for that matter. So, without further ado, let's get into the moveset. Starting off simple, the jab and dash attack are both simple get-off-me tools. For the jab, it's a basic punch with the bow before pulling it back to shoot an arrow. It's a simple 2-hit jab that deals minor damage, but has some additional functionality that I'll get to later. And for the dash attack, the skeleton will lunge both his arms straight out. This is a loose reference to how they stance up when aggroed, as well as the generic attacking animations of a lot of Minecraft's hostile mobs. The forward tilt is the first move to be sourced from another skeleton type, specifically the wither skeleton. It's a downward slash with a stone sword. It's pretty much Steve's jab, but is a single strong hit instead of a combo move. Skeleton's up tilt is also a sword move, being an upward thrust with both arms, taken from the wither skeleton's default attacking animation. It's a pretty standard launcher that doesn't send very far, meaning that you can juggle people with it at early percents. And his down tilt is a low to the ground swipe with the sword, basically Steve's ledge attack. Functionally, it does expected down tilt stuff. It's not particularly fast, but it's a reliable combo starter up close. And for his last move, Skeleton's forward smash is a copy of Steve's, a sideways slash with the sword with an accompanying sweep effect. Now to put that archery skill together, a good use. The skeleton's up smash has it lob a TNT block above its head before detonating it with a fire arrow. It would function a lot like Snake's up smash, with the sweet spot at the explosion and a scooping hitbox into it. Skeletons are capable of spawning with flame bows, and fire arrows can set off TNT, so this is a loose reference to that. Also, for the sake of clarity, any alternative arrow type will be distinguished by an effect on the tip of the arrow, have it be a small flame, potion particles, what have you. That same bow is used for his down smash, having the skeleton shoot 2 fire arrows to either side of him. After shooting the ground, the fire lingers for a second, causing minor damage if made contact with, although it doesn't cause flinching. Moving off the ground and into the air, it's time to talk about Skeleton's aerials. I struggled for a bit when thinking of what the Skeleton's neutral air should be, as nothing really stood out to me, but I knew that I wanted it to tie into their species in some way, so it eventually led me to this idea, which I admit is a bit silly. Skeletons share a trait with zombies in that they burn up in the sunlight, and in the case of zombies, they actually can spread that fire to you by getting close. So, for Skeleton's neutral air, he will abruptly be set aflame, dealing fire damage to those nearby as he flails his arms around in a panic. I imagine it having a similar flow to Mewtwo's, with some drag down setups at certain percents. The Skeleton's forward air has it pull out a crossbow and use the multi-shot enchantment, shooting out 3 arrows that fan out in front of him a short distance. Skeletons can't actually use crossbows in Minecraft, but I've always thought that it fit their aesthetic, and allowing the skeleton to use one greatly increases his moveset potential, so I've decided to let him have one. This move is similar to Villager's forward air, although it's quite a bit slower as it takes time to load and release the crossbow, but its reward is higher, both in terms of damage and positional advantage, especially considering how it has a minor pushback property, as the recoil of the bow sends him backwards as he shoots. The back air has the skeleton swing the bow behind, kind of like how Steve swings his pickaxe. It's fairly disjointed and is pretty quick, but very much lacks kill power, similarly to Inkling's back air. Skeleton's up air is an aerial version of his up tilt, an upward thrust with the sword. It's a pretty simple move, so I'll leave it at that. If you can believe it, this is actually the last move to use the sword. Everything from here on out ties directly into his archer game, like his final aerial, down air. For it, the skeleton will shoot an instant damage tipped arrow below him. Think Mega Man's down air, but without the spike. Despite being a tipped arrow, it would act more like a splash potion, having it travel down a short distance before exploding into a cloud of particles. This move would be strongest at the explosion, dealing major damage if spaced correctly. Next are the throws. Considering how well he plays at mid-range, I don't think he should prioritize grappling, so for the exception of one, none of his throws would be very great. So, for Skeleton's grab, he will shoot out a spectral arrow as a tether. Anyone caught by it will be marked by the glowing effect, showing that they are in the grabbed state, and the pummel will be a continuous shot of arrows at point blank. The forward and up throws would be analogs to Steve's piston, but instead of being a piston, it would be a dispenser. One of the many uses for a dispenser in Minecraft is to shoot arrows, so I thought that it would fit right into this moveset, shooting straight out for the forward throw and straight up for the up throw. The back throw would have the skeleton equip a punch bow to shoot the foe straight backward. Punch is an enchantment in Minecraft that increases the knockback a mob takes after being hit with it. Considering the nature of the enchantment, I think it would make sense for this to be a mercy kill option at later percents. And lastly, the down throw will have the skeleton slam the foe to the ground with one arm, before shooting 3 poison-tipped arrows into them with a crossbow, popping them into the air and causing damage over time for a short while. Its viability as a combo throw falls off fairly quickly, so I wanted to incentivize using it after it surpasses those percent thresholds with an additional kind of reward. At this point, I hope you realize that, despite being a bow user, a lot of Skeleton's moves lack full-screen presence. His disjoints are fairly tame for projectile standards, and are often slow and telegraphed. This was all intentional, as I didn't want the strength of his normals to overshadow his more potent projectile options, all of which can be observed through his special attacks, and believe me, this is where things start to get crazy. I think it's rather funny that it took me this long to get around to saying this. For Skeleton's neutral special, he does what skeletons do best. He charges up his bow and shoots an arrow. This is a pretty simple projectile, akin to Link's bow, gradually increasing in power as you charge it. However, unlike Link, once it reaches the maximum charge, you'll be forced to shoot it. You'll also be able to move when charging, but you'll be slowed down considerably when doing so, allowing for some tricky movement mix-ups as you ready the projectile. Its power isn't anything to write home about, but it's a reliable zoning tool for the entire match. As you'd expect, this is the tool in the Skeleton's kit that he relies on the most, but that's not all this move has to offer. You know how angling Peach's forward smash changes what kind of weapon she hits you with? Well, that mechanic also applies to this move. Without holding a direction, neutral special will default to the normal arrow, but holding up while charging will have it turn into a slowness arrow, courtesy of the stray mob. This projectile is considerably slower than the default arrow. I'm talking Toon Link's arrow, maybe slower, and can easily be destroyed by hitting it. But if it makes contact with an opponent, their movement speed will actually decrease. It won't be by very much or for very long, but it allows for some well-needed breathing room against fast characters, as well as something to run behind to aid in a frontal assault. As long as an arrow is out, or the opponent is slowed down, a second slowness arrow cannot be shot, which is to say that using this move is a commitment, sacrificing a safe and spammable zoning tool for one with greater reward. Speaking of a commitment, by aiming down while charging, the skeleton will instead pull out a crossbow and begin loading it with a firework rocket. This move breaks the trend of the automatic release by letting you store the charge, and is the strongest projectile he has under normal circumstances. However, it's only possible to shoot this move after the crossbow is fully charged, and that can only occur after a lengthy charging animation. Not to mention that once it's charged, it overrides the entire neutral special. When the charge is released, the skeleton will shoot out the rocket, causing a very powerful explosion a set distance away. However, the only part of this move with a hitbox is the explosion, meaning that if you don't space it correctly, you'll miss and be in for a nasty punish. Because it's so precise, this move is only viable to go for when you are absolutely sure that it will hit, and since holding onto it means giving up a more reliable projectile, the fact that Skeleton lacks full screen presence elsewhere in his kit starts to become a much bigger issue. Also, the color of the firework as it explodes will be random. It wouldn't affect gameplay, it's just some visual flair. That might make it sound complex, but it's a very simple attack. Press the button to shoot an arrow, hold up for a slower one, and down for an explosion. Next is the side special, which actually ties directly into the neutral special. Yeah, I'm still not done with that. In Minecraft, there's a rare mob configuration called spider jockeys. They're skeletons that spawn riding spiders. These mobs are considerably more dangerous than regular skeletons, because they maintain the sharp shooting while being incredibly mobile. In Smash, this would be interpreted as a simple burst movement tool, with some additional mechanics to keep in mind. On use, the skeleton will spawn a spider underneath its feet and start charging forward. The spider will dash a bit faster than Skeleton's run speed, and would act as a launching hitbox to anyone it makes contact with. While dashing forward, you'd actually be able to charge and shoot your neutral special while moving. Although with the length of the animation, you'd probably only be able to get off one shot at most. This includes the firework rocket, by the way. If you had a hard time lining up a shot for it before, imagine it now. After a short time running, the skeleton will jump off as the spider it was riding disappears. Sounds like a fun move, right? Well, that's not all. Spiders have the unique ability to climb walls, so when using this move, if you collide with a wall or the side of a stage, the spider will cling itself to the wall and start climbing upwards, allowing for an aid in recovery and potentially some wonky arrow angles. This idea was, what's the word I'm looking for? No, not that. Yeah, that's the one. Inspired by Max Hamm's take on close combat in his Smash Moveset video for Kleavor. So, thanks for that. Alright, so here's where things get silly. There's a certain technique in Minecraft that players can do where they shoot themselves with a bow enchanted with punch to launch themselves long distances. It's not really a thing you see anymore, or ever to be honest, but it's still in the game and may have some very fringe use cases if you don't have an elytra and don't feel like bridging. Recently, I found myself reminiscing on how I used to do that all the time on servers due to how fun it was, and I eventually thought, that would make a really funny up special. This stupid idea is pretty much the reason why I wanted to make this moveset. It's a really silly character doing a bunch of silly things, and this move embodies that. So, Skeleton's up special is Punch Bow. On use, the skeleton will aim his bow upwards and shoot an arrow into the sky, before jumping into it to launch himself in an upwards direction. When the skeleton is sent flying, his body turns into a high-speed projectile, flailing so uncontrollably that colliding with a solid surface will have him bounce off, kind of like the Untechable spin from Smash 4. The only thing that can cancel this animation is if he grabs a ledge, and if you don't do that, then prepare to fall to your doom. That being said, the skeleton's body is an active hitbox during the launch, so you can use it offensively, it just isn't very wise to do so. If I had to equate this move to anything, the closest would be Diddy Kong's jetpack. An all-out, reckless attack that is a weakness that he doesn't in any way need, but is really, really funny. Plus, it's not like it's your only option for recovery. Remember, the spider can climb stage walls. And last, but certainly not least, the down special. Despite the fact that a lot of the skeleton's moves aren't necessarily things that he can do in-game, I don't feel like I've made any major leaps in logic. After all, dispensers, crossbows, tipped arrows, they all tie into the archery theme. As is the same with this move. However, more than any other move, I will be taking a massive creative liberty with this one, to such an extent that it barely resembles its original incarnation. But I think how fun of a mechanic this would be more than justifies that. One of my favorite moves in the entire game to use is Link's remote bomb. I love how the simple decision to let it be affected by physics allows it to be manipulated by Link's entire kit, for a lot of tricky setups and really cool looking combos. It's such a simple move, but it can lead to so many galaxy brain plays that I always love to watch. I think giving the skeleton a dynamic tool in the same boat would be really interesting, and would likewise allow for a ton of creative expression, which is very much Minecraft. So, for Skeleton's down special, he will place down a target block. At first glance, it doesn't seem to do anything. If left alone, it would sit idly by for a while before disappearing into thin air. That is, until you attack it. In the first of many creative liberties taken with this block, attacking it will have it be launched in the direction you hit it, and in Smash, it would be affected by gravity. If you hit it up in the air, it'll eventually come right back down. When it's in the state of being launched, it turns into a moderately powerful projectile. This alone is a powerful zoning tool, giving the skeleton, and anyone else who hits it, access to a move movable object capable of gimping, killing, stage denial, anything you can think of. But here is where the target aspect of this block comes into play. Under normal circumstances, hitting it with a move will limply knock it away, but hitting it with any of the skeleton's arrows will launch the block much further in specific angles with specific effects relating to what move it's hit by. Like for instance, the down smash. Hitting the block with a fire arrow at point blank will have it bounce away at a 45-degree angle, perfect for covering an enemy's jump in. The forward air sends the block at a strictly horizontal angle, allowing for you to snipe people across the stage with it. You could use the second hit of jab to knock it off stage, in order to confirm it into a down air which would now spike as the target block flies downwards. And that's not even the end of it. In Minecraft, the closer you hit a target block to its center point, the stronger the redstone current it emits. Why don't we take that literally? Why not make it so that when hit by any of the skeleton's neutral special projectiles, instead of altering the trajectory, it causes the block to stop in place and surge with electricity, causing damage to anyone near. And God forbid you hit that block with a firework rocket, that thing isn't just surging with power, it's exploding. There are so many things that you could do with this move. So many insane plays, across the stage snipes, chain reactions, intentional confirms, happy little accidents, so on and so forth. And to be completely honest, while this is not at all how the target block functions in Minecraft, I still feel like it gets the spirit of it across. Hit the block with an arrow in just the right way and be rewarded for doing so. Now, a tool like this would be incredibly over-centralizing without any drawbacks, so the catch is that the block has a certain amount of health. If it reaches 0 before you get it to where you want to detonate it, you're out of luck. You can also only have one active at a time, it has a cooldown after it's been destroyed, and other players can hit it back at you like DDD's Gordos. Regardless, it's still an incredibly versatile tool, and would be, without a doubt, incredibly fun to use. The last move to cover is the Final Smash, and for it I've saved one of the most memorable aspects of the skeleton's repertoire. Upon activation, the skeleton will get struck by lightning, turning itself into a skeleton horseman before charging forward. Anyone hit by the charge will be blown into the middle of rainy plains in the dead of night. The skeleton, from atop a cliffside, beckons orders to attack as hundreds of additional skeleton horsemen, strays, and wither skeletons charge forward below, and attack the foe relentlessly. Once the smoke clears, the camera zooms into the player skeleton as he readies a crossbow, loads it with a firework rocket, and shoots a massive explosion in the shape of a creeper head at the opponent, turning the screen white and launching them away as the cinematic ends. I knew from the beginning that I had to include the skeleton horseman in the moveset, but I didn't want it to be another charge forward special move, given that he already has one of those with the spider jockey, so making it his final smash, alongside getting the other skeleton species in on the action, felt like the right call. Just don't ask what the wither skeleton is doing out of the nether. So, that's the moveset. But before I wrap up, I want to discuss the extra stuff. For the skeleton's intro animation, he will appear from a spawner. For taunts, his up taunt will have him put his bow into hammer space before pulling out a stone sword and raising it to the sky. His side taunt will have it perform an idle animation from Minecraft Dungeons, where he spins his skull like a top before stopping it in place. And his down taunt will be based on the skeleton's dying animation, having him dramatically fall over as he puffs into smoke, with another skeleton spawning in his place. I love the idea that this skeleton just spawned into here one day and is now being forced to fight for his life, and when he's killed, he's just replaced by another one. That makes me laugh. For victory screens, the first one will have a skeleton horse appear by itself before being struck by lightning, summoning a group of skeleton horsemen that stand behind the player skeleton as he shoots his bow into the sky. The second victory screen will have a creeper walk into view before being shot from off screen, with the skeleton running up to grab the dropped music disc. And his final victory screen will take a cue from Piranha Plant and show Steve being killed by a group of zombies, spiders, slimes, etc., before zooming out to show the skeleton watching happily from the sidelines. After all, he's a hostile mob, that is his ultimate goal. For alternate costumes, he could use the different armor sets in Minecraft, as skeletons can spawn wearing armor, and Steve left that aspect unrepresented. Player 1 would be the default skeleton model, Player 2 would be leather, Player 3 gold, Player 4 chainmail, Player 5 an enchanted iron helmet, and Player 6 diamond. And for Players 7 and 8, they could be alternate characters like the zombie and enderman are, with the wither skeleton, sized down to fit the model, and the stray. When killed in a stamina match, the skeleton will drop his skull, which can be picked up as an item to be thrown around at other players. This is a reference to how wither skeletons can drop their skulls on death. The throwing around part is just for fun. And last but not least, the boxing ring titles would be the Supernatural Sniper for the skeleton, Henchman of the Wither for the wither skeleton, and the Bone-Chilling Drifter for the stray. For a stage, I could see there being one based on the Nether, as it's an incredibly iconic location in Minecraft with the same kind of diverse biome layouts that Minecraft World has, as well as being the only dimension to house both regular and wither skeletons. To give a brief example of what the different forms might might look like, I could see one based on the Nether Wastes biome, where the fighting takes place on top of a Nether Fortress bridge, and a Soul Sand Valley layout that has fossils present as platforms. I could also see a layout in a Crimson Forest where you fight on a bastion, a form that takes place on top of the mushroom trees in the Warped Forest, and a hazardous form based on the Basalt Deltas, with lava pockets that act similarly to the Mario Maker stage. And while I'm talking about the stage, I'd really like to see more justice given to the music selection. Supposedly, they excluded music from the original game because it was too peaceful for the tone of Smash, but that's stupid and wrong. Plenty of the music discs in the game fit Smash perfectly fine, and even if they didn't, they do remixes for a reason. For this stage alone, I could see the inclusion of the Pig Step, Ward, and Mellowhigh discs, as well as remixes of Aria Math and Concrete Halls. And for Minecraft World, remixes of Sweden, Wet Hands, Mice on Venus, the credits theme, and a medley of Cat and Dog and both Droopy songs. Also, if they included a remix of Com 4, then I'd be satisfied for life. If you know, you know. So, what do you think? At a glance, the skeleton is a very humble creature. Sure, it's well known, it's a generic enemy from the highest selling game of all time, but it's just that, a generic enemy. But once you dig deeper, no pun intended, you'll find a very fascinating character. Someone with a large pool of tricks to pull from, an unrepresented weapon type, an incredibly rich neutral and combo game, so on and so forth. It's always fun to see those big names, knowing that the wishes of millions of people have finally come true after so long. It's what kept the Smash hype alive for all of these years. But don't think a character doesn't have potential just because they're simple on the surface. It's always important to keep an open mind, and remember that some of the most interesting designs often come from the most unexpected of places. Oh, also, they would never do this and I totally get it, but I really wish that they would just add Terraria music to the Minecraft stage. That game has a fantastic soundtrack, and I want to jam out to it while I play. Like, seriously, listen to this music.